What is the weirdest top 10 single of all time? With over 8 minutes of guitar drones, queasy vocals and no actual chorus, Leave Them All Behind by Ride has to be a top contender. And as the first song on their sophomore album, it acts as both a red herring and a flood of psychedelic noise of such biblical proportions that it essentially wipes the slate clean and enables the band to literally leave their shoegazing contemporaries behind and spend the rest of Going Blank Again driving home the melodic skill which defines their sound. Welcome to 2020 Sound. This is the second video we're doing on underappreciated albums from Creation Records. Please give us a subscribe if you're interested in watching more videos about underrated classics from indie and alternative rock history. Now, it's been great over the last 10 years finally seeing Ride get some well-deserved appreciation and breaking this narrative that had them pegged as the band that appeared after My Bloody Valentine in, the dictionary definition of what shoegaze is. Because the two groups are very different when you take a look back at their output. Clearly Isn't Anything by My Bloody Valentine was a big influence on Ride in the early days, as it was a big influence on all those shoegaze bands. But from about 1991 onwards, the two groups are on very, very different trajectories. Loveless is literally peerless. There's nothing before or since that really sounds anything like that record, except My Bloody Valentine's own follow-up, MBV, from 2013, of course. The focus for them is very much sound. The songs are really just structures upon which they can hang these extraordinary sonic textures. I mean, you'd be extremely hard pushed to turn up to an open mic night and bash out a bit of To Hear Knows When on an acoustic guitar. Well, the focus of Ride has always been ultimately about crafting fantastic guitar pop. From Chelsea Girl, the first song on their very first EP, right up until 2019's This Is Not a Safe Place album, the band have proven themselves not just one of the best songwriters of their generation, but also one of the most distinctive. A lot has been made of Going Blank Again being the band moving away from the sounds that they were going for on Nowhere, and clearly they were changing. They say that on Nowhere they were trying to essentially mix the sound of My Bloody Valentine with the House of Love and the Jesus and Mary chain. And on Going Blank Again you can hear these different influences coming into the mix, from Neil Young to Neu, from New Order to Nick Drake. But Going Blank Again was the first Ride album that I ever heard. So when I worked back to Nowhere, I wasn't shocked. It made total sense, because Ride's sound isn't defined by any shoegaze tropes. It's not defined by the amount of delay or distortion or reverb that's on their guitars. It's defined by the vocals of Mark Gardner and Andy Bell and the interplay between them, and the wonderful, giddy, manic drumming of Loz Colbert. And those characteristics are in full force across this whole album. As a drummer myself, Loz Colbert was a big inspiration for me. He combines power with groove and creativity to spice up every song, particular highlights being Cool Your Boots, which has this really cool, unusual, jerky rhythm with lots of sudden gear shifts to keep you on your toes. The drums in Chrome Waves give the song this great bedrock groove, which lifts it up from being just a standard rock ballad. You can imagine if he'd played it straight, it could have ended up sounding like Ordinary World by Duran Duran or something like that. But I won't cry for yesterday. But with the 16th notes over the top and the skipping feel that he gives it takes it in a completely different direction. 100 years from now. Apparently they were trying to rip off Unfinished Sympathy by Massive Attack on this song, which I never realised until looking into it, but when you know that, it's really obvious that's what they're going for. And of course, Leave Them All Behind is one of the all-time great indie rock drum performances, from the offbeat swagger of the verses right to the wild wig out at the end. Mark and Andy's vocals just complement each other so well. Individually, they're decent indie singers, but when they come together, it just makes for a really cool sound. I think this album went a long way to making me fall in love with the sound of vocal harmonies. And half the time, they're not even singing actual words, they're just ahhing. alone? 85% R-ing. And just because I don't want to do him a disservice, I've got to give a big shout out to Steve Quart's bass playing, because his bass line is the focal point of one of my absolute favourite moments in musical history. Not just Ride's musical history, but all musical history. It's the final stretch of Leave Them All Behind. 6 minutes and 57 seconds. The guitars are raging like torrents. The drums are going crazy. And then suddenly, appearing as if like Moses from out of nowhere.
Hiya, you alright?
To lead us to the promised land comes Steve Quart's almost funk-like bass line at 7 minutes and 18 seconds to just guide us to the end of the song on this gorgeous, gorgeous groove, just gradually surfing through these waves of noise. Oh, it's beautiful. How it became a number 9 hit in the British Top 40, I'll never know, but it is glorious all the same. So Going Blank Again was a time of great experimentation for the band. They went into the studio with Alan Moulder in October 1991, just a few weeks after Nirvana had released Nevermind, which had moved the goalpost so rapidly away from the shoegaze and the indie dance scenes in England that the band must have wondered what sort of reaction they'd get upon their return. Perhaps that fueled them to put even more distance between themselves and the rest of the shoegaze scene, something that I think they were already thinking, seeing as the original plan for Going Blank Again was to go into the studio and create a 26-song sprawling epic like the White Album, going off in different stylistic directions until their American record label Sire taught them down to a more reasonable 10. Some aspects of the songs that got jettisoned still made it onto the album. An ambient tinge track called Blue, there's keyboards from that which combined with a dub bass line from a song called, and I'm not kidding you here, King Bullshit. Is it just me, or is that the least Ride song title ever? Anyway, those two things combined to form the intro to the song Time Machine. While there's a sort of wave of distortion that you can hear at the start of OX4, which sort of fades out as the rest of the song fades in. And that was apparently from an experimental noise track that the band originally conceived of to end the album. They clearly had an abundance of great material during this period. If you check out the B-sides that appear on the remastered version of the album, there's some fantastic stuff there, especially Grasshopper, which is this 10-minute post-rock epic with probably the greatest riff the band ever wrote. And then there's Going Blank Again, the title track, which is a perfect slice of jangle pop. To me, it sounds like a single. I don't know how it didn't make it onto the album. Perhaps it's the swagger of the drums which tie it a little too close to the then passé baggy scene. You know, it sounds like it'd fit in really well next to stuff like the Stone Roses and the Charlatans. I'm going blank again. The band were clearly reaching for sounds and influences that weren't in vogue in the indie scene at that time. Going back to the album, if you listen to Making Judy Smile, it sounds really Kinks inspired. While Twisterella is pure Big Star style power pop. And OX4? Well, to be honest, to me, it sounds almost like Tears for Fears. The record feels like it's signposting to the bolder, shinier sounds of the Britpop era, while still retaining the noise and experimentation of the period that it was released. Despite the top 10 hit, the album underperformed. They were too early for Britpop, and the eyes of the media were still very much trained on the grunge scene over in America. The album still holds a place in a lot of people's hearts. Many people prefer Nowhere, but I remember a poll that the Creation Records website ran in the early 2000s, asking fans to tell them what they thought was the greatest album that Creation ever released. And the winner was Going Blank Again. I'm not sure where I'd place it, but it's definitely in the running. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know what you think about Going Blank Again in the comments. Is it better than Nowhere? Is it the greatest record that Creation Records ever released? You decide. If you like this video, please give us a like and please subscribe if you like further videos all about underrated classics from indie and alternative rock history.